Well, there was a jolly ship built in Nazi Germany, and the name of the ship was the Admiral Graspe, and she looted merchantmen of every nationality as she sailed upon the rolling, bowling, as she sailed upon the rolling sea. She met 3 cruisers of the British Navy, and to stop them she knew would put Berlin on the spree. Their commander laughed aloud, now merry games there'll be, for I'll sink them neath the rolling, bowling, for I'll sink them neath the rolling sea. She fired her mighty guns, did the Admiral Graspe. Her captain laughed aloud and hugged himself with glee, but he swore a hasty oath as the little cruisers 3 came dashing o'er the rolling, bowling, came dashing o'er the rolling sea. To the helm quick he cried, and turned face right merrily, or if you're a small moustache we never more may live to see. With his tail between his legs, in his ear a lively flea, he went scurrying o'er the rolling, bowling, he went scurrying through the rolling sea. Yes, the Berry went to cover where his wounds the world could see, for the British bulldog bite had hurt it painfully, and the foeman speeding forward knew the fight that he had seen would end beneath the rolling, bowling, would end beneath the rolling sea. Yes, and this was the end of the Admiral Graspe, and perhaps it was for this that a pocket ship was she, for in Davy Jones's pocket scuttled most ingloriously. She rusts beneath the rolling, bowling, she rusts beneath the rolling sea.
Hello friends and gamers, and welcome back to the Fortress. This is the Allied Strategic Conference for turn number 7, July 1939. As you all know, a lot happened this turn, so I debated going over this past turn, debated going and assessing what happened this past turn, assessing what could have been done differently, and the like, but I chose against it. These strategic conferences are always going to be forward-facing, analyzing the future and developing strategy as opposed to reflecting backwards. So I will touch upon what happened, but only as it pertains to the future strategy. And slightly a little bit in regards to current events. Okay, so France, as you know, capitulated. They capitulated by an attack from the Bavaria, first impulse to Belgium, second impulse to there. We may have been able to defeat them if we had a little bit more income to spend, and perhaps if we didn't send that unit out to Ethiopia, and if the dice had, well, in that case I think we would have for sure won, especially with the build Germany had. If we had just a little bit more income, we would have won that battle. Nonetheless, that first chapter is closed, and sometimes happily so, because it would have been quite a short game, and we want to actually have a bit more in-depth than what we had thus far. So that's what happened there. Netherlands continues to exist. Holland. Each turn I'm feeding Holland 2 infantry plus the recruitment roll, so currently they have 10 units over there, which means that if Japan ever declares war on the Commonwealth, then this is going to be a thorn in the side of the Axis powers in Europe. So I expect if anybody goes to war against Netherlands, it'll be initiated by the Germans, because if Japan initiates the war against the Commonwealth, these have 1 turn to move around, or at least 1 turn to be reinforced by British fighters to that position. And so I expect either on the next, well, it won't be the next German turn, and if they do, they'll suffer heavily casualties there, with 10 units and only 5 German infantry, plus a few of their aircraft being able to hit Netherlands. And they'll also be crossing a river, so they'll be rolling quite poorly for the infantry and suffering a good few casualties on their infantry for sure. So I expect that will benefit us, and so it'll be Germany's subsequent turn on July 1940. I expect they'll attack here, but perhaps not. What else will Germany do? Well, they can go one of 2 routes at this point. Take out the neutral nations, take out nations like Yugoslavia, Greece for $1, which or Denmark for another buck, and Norway for a total of $3 plus a bonus of 1. So they can do that. Now, in total, they would pick up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, $8 if they did that, went down that route. But my advice is always against that. Always. I think, why go against neutral nations when you can actually go to war against Soviet Russia? So you could pick up 7 territories at the very least, and you're taking away $7 from Russia, and you're taking away $7 from Russia as well. So it's a net gain of 14 against the Soviets, as opposed to just a net gain of 7 for the Axis at the expense of the neutral nations. Plus, the Allies would get reinforced by some torpedo boats and some coastal defense ships. So for me, always, as Germany, I always go for Russia. Now, on top of that too, if Germany takes out these Yugoslavia and Greece, now they have to worry about defending these 2 territories as well. Same thing with Norway. It opens up this long coast where you have to defend an additional 3 territories. Now, my advice as Germany would be go after Russia. Forget about the neutrals. Just straight go after Russia, because you are also fighting a 2-front war over here. So between these 2 areas, $2 here and gaining $5 over here somewhere, I think you'll have sufficient dollars to make up for whatever you would have lost by going after the traditional historical nations that Germany pursued. Now, in addition to that, it also, if Germany went after Yugoslavia, it's going to put them out of position to attack Russia sooner rather than later, which means it would push back their attack to, I think, July 1941. As it currently stands, they could at earliest go to war in perhaps July or January 1941. I expect that will be the case. But if they go after neutrals, well, it could be July 1941. A little bit late for my taste. I think the earlier the better, because America just keeps getting stronger, and so the sooner you attack, the better that is for you, especially if you could wipe out an opportune amount of their if the opportunity strikes and you could wipe out a good chunk of their forces. That would be good. So that would be the German strategy. The Italian strategy, we've successfully thus far kept them from the war, which is our goal. We hope to keep doing that. Next turn, we're going to keep positioning our Royal Fleet from this position up here under Cunningham and come down to Sea Zone 80 over here, where we'll pick up most of our transports in Sea Zone 80. If not, we'll move to Sea Zone 79 on the other side of Gibraltar. And of course that means the Mediterranean is free. But by moving here, we can still utilize this dockyard and repair our damaged battleship. There it is. And at the same time pick up our transports. So the reason we want to gather our transports together is so that we can start threatening the coast of France to keep some of these German units present there. I mean, it's still a little bit far for our troops to go, but from this position, from Sea Zone 79, we can threaten the entire, much of the coast from Normandy to Aquitaine and force him to deliver troops to that area, as well as we could threaten Rome as well. So the Italian strategy thus far is going to keep building up slowly, keep building their factories slowly. Although I don't know the emphasis on factories. I haven't built any factories as the Allies, and I think that income will come into our favor later on in the game, where we won't have to worry about them later on. So the Italian strategy is just going to build up and try to compete against the British Navy. Now, we hope to also build up, throw a few troops into our Royal Navy stack just to keep them honest, and also deposit some infantry units here so that we can threaten Rome. Of course, Rome is not going to be our target. He doesn't know that, but we want to make landings around Rome because Rome is going to be too strong. Between the city, the city territory is going to boost everything up. We're going to go probably for Campania and take out southern Italy as well. Sicily, Mezzogiorno, and perhaps northern Italy if possible, leaving Rome for last is our hope. Unless he leaves Rome open, and then we'll strike there. That is our goal for the Mediterranean, to keep the Italians honest. Now, in the Middle East, we have a bigger question, a bigger equation. So in the Middle East, as you all know, Germany did acquire Iran, Iraq, and Syria. Now, we wouldn't have declared war as France against Iran if Iraq hadn't already flipped to the Axis by this attack into Syria. So that's what's happening. We can't pick up our wartime bonus as the British Commonwealth in Iran until we recapture all of Iran. Unfortunately, I figured this out from one of you beloved observers, which, fantastic, thank you for that. I appreciate it. So we do have to pick up those 2 territories. This fight will go go away pretty quickly. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and plus enough aircraft to cause damage here. 2 aircraft to cause damage against his 2 units. So he could throw militia on 3 of these territories, and that will cause a headache for us. But at the end of the day, we're still going to win that fight. But we've succeeded in our supreme goal of keeping out the Soviets. That is our goal, because this is worth 3 victory points to them in this area. So that forces them to redirect their efforts against the Germans, which is what we want them to do. We don't want them to be exploring other parts of the globe. If they go against the Germans, then we don't have to lend these as much to them, and they already have plenty of money. So let them go fight against the Axis and keep us out of that fight. Keep this Iranian area in our hands. That's our goal over there. Now let's quickly touch on, we touched on the Mediterranean, but the Suez Canal is also important. The Suez, well, we have to worry about the Suez slightly because this Italian force, between this, they can't get to our position in Eastern Egypt, but Eastern Egypt is worth $6 to us. So we need to preserve that army. Now we got a stack of infantry, 5 infantry there, plus 5 militia plus 2 infantry. So there's no way he's breaking into this, especially with his Italian sole transport here. Now, if I played the Italians, I always build 2 or 3 transports. But we can get into that some other day. But at this stage, with only 1 transport, it's going to be a long, hard struggle, and we could see it coming as he moves from Cyrenaica to Western Egypt to Eastern Egypt. So we have time with that one, but the defense is good enough for now. How is this all going here? Okay. Here, I'm kind of resetting this because my easel shuffled things through. So here in East Africa, so the Italians cannot do too much. The only mobile unit they have is this mountain infantry and this airborne aircraft. So we are guarding the only position worth anything up here in Nubia. So again, we'll see that attack coming for a while. So there's nothing that he's going to do about that just yet. Free France. Now Free France is simple. Well, I guess this cavalry here goes there. So Free France will pick up Cameroon next turn, and that reoccupies all the territories of any value in Africa for France. We only have Madagascar left over, which is why we're moving this fleet here. Now it'll take a few turns to get there, and who knows if they'll survive. But we need to, that's our plan with the French, is eventually bring them to this position where we could pick up Madagascar. So that covers that. I know I haven't covered the British Islands yet, so let's zoom over there. Again, this fleet here is going to position itself in such a way to keep threatening Rome, but at the same time secure all our transports. Currently our transports are scattered from India, Iran, Suez Canal. There's one over here, and we want to gather them all as much as we can in one of these 2 sea zones so that we can protect them with our fleet as well as begin to threaten an attack against France itself. Now, this fleet here under Fraser, so Fraser has that fleet balanced out in such a way that with what we have here, we are sufficient that we'll be able to win against any combat caused by the Germans. The Germans can bring 3 submarines plus a destroyer and a coastal submarine to this position, and if they engage there, we will likely win that fight. But it might be tempting enough that he'll engage it. There is a risk there, because you'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units against my, maybe 5 ships as a fighter. Mine are more powerful than his, so he likely won't make that attack, but if he does, we have a lot of strength there as well to hold him off. This one here, under Somerville, is a little bit more close. Now, the fact that this submarine survived tips the balance quite a bit in that scale, especially too since 2 ships over here, Raiders fleet, well, his torpedo boat destroyer plus his submarine can also hit this position. So we'd be facing a lot of ships under Somerville. We'd be facing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ships in this position, plus his aircraft. 1, 2, 3, 4 aircraft. So that's 6 plus 4 is 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, 10 units engaging my fleet here. Here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We have 10 as well, but ours are of slightly better quality, but I've calculated this to be fairly balanced. That if the Germans attack there, they'll use the majority of their submarine fleet to do so, and even if they do wipe out our fleet, he'll take enough casualties that all he'll have left is a couple aircraft. I mean, we'll lose all of our stuff too for the most part, but due to that air superiority round, we'll take out a lot of his aircraft in that first round, and in the subsequent rounds, he'll have to take away his cheapest units, which will be his submarines, and, well, he might take away his destroyer and torpedo boat destroyer, but even so, he'll be left with only 1 or 2 submarines, which I actually am okay with that. That's why I calculate this one to be a close fight, as kind of a bait under Somerville to attract his attack so he can wipe out those submarines instead of us chasing them all the way across the Atlantic every which way. So that is the goal with this one. So this fleet here discourages them from convoy raiding in this area, in these areas. These aircraft discourage him for convoy raiding here. And then we have, I mean, of course, he can still use 2 of these submarines to, let's see, I could only react to 2 of these submarines that raid in this area, just because I have 2 fighters in range to hit. 1 fighter at range here. So 1 submarine could go here. Basically, I could only engage 2 submarines, hit 1 here and 1 in either one of these territories, or either one of these 4 territories, rather. And that means he could use all of his submarines to still raid these sea zones because I can't protect them all. But nonetheless, that's what I'm doing thus far. Next turn, we're going to also build another light carrier and a light cruiser. And in that way, we will be able to, well, boost up our forces here. And then our light cruiser will we'll have an aircraft guarding this position and an aircraft guarding the position up north off of Iceland. And that means that any of his regular submarines that pass through that area are engaged by our aircraft. Now, once he gets advanced submarines, it's going to be a different story, and he can pass through without the maritime air patrol triggering a combat. So that's going to be a different equation at that point. But that's what's happening there. Now, what we may do is this Free French troop needs to also get to Morocco so we can pick up northern Algeria. Now, that is going to be a little bit of a walk. It'll take a few turns to do that. I mean, not a few turns, but we have to protect against this Vichy fleet. You can't quite see it. But the Vichy fleet is at war with Free France. So if we moved our Free French ships here, and I had my British fleet present here, these Vichy ships can attack the Free French without engaging the British Royal Navy. So that's why we're kind of staying out of that position. What we do intend to do once we have a bigger base is perhaps we're going to lend-lease an airborne transport to the Free French, so that they can start picking off some of these other territories here and there and acquire some more points. But in the meantime, we may build a militia here, and then I'm going to see if I can boost up the militia to become a regular infantry. So it'll cost a few turns, but next turn, a militia here, and the subsequent turn, purchase it so that we can boost that one up to become, where's this one from? Yeah. Boost that militia up to become regular infantry and walk across northern Algeria and then Tunisia. That's the plan with them, if possible. I'm not sure if Free French militia can be boosted up, but I'm assuming so. I'll have to take a look at their chart. I think that covers the Atlantic. We have Somerville's fleet as kind of a bait to attract and attacks by all the submarines plus the aircraft. We have Fraser's fleet to be anti-convoy anti-submarine fleet, anti-convoy system fleet or something like that. Then we have, well, the Canadians are over here doing an escort duty. Now that's not going to be too substantial, but it'll keep this area honest. I debated if I should move them up here, but this one's pretty valuable. And I know my aircraft can go here and take out his submarines, but I thought for right now that would be the better option. I've talked a little bit about our transports, which are spread everywhere, including this one here. So we have 4 transports that need to be recovered back in this position. So we might gather three together over here. And if we do that, then we're going to be, well, starting to threaten that French coast. I've covered Africa. I've covered the Middle East, India. So India is threatened here by the Japanese forces. They have 4 infantry and 2 marines that can hit into this area, plus a multitude of aircraft, 2 tactical bombers, 4 fighters, and all their shore bombardments. This is a city area, so all my infantry type units are getting +1. But I made a very tempting target this turn for the Japanese. There's 4 transports and a destroyer that they can strike. That maybe not this one here. That might be a bit far. But 4 transports they can strike is not a bad situation. They may do that because that's quite worth it. But of course, at that point, then I could reinforce the Netherlands over there, and then I have a nice toehold on the continent that I could continuously feed with units, and, well, I already have a second front opened up. So I think the Netherlands are going to keep the Japanese somewhat honest at this stage, at least until a little bit later on when they when the equation changes once again. I just found a militia rather, here, and I think that's supposed to go here. I'll have to double check my video later on. Okay, because I can't see where else they would have come from. Alright, so yes, the Japanese can strike here, but the Netherlands would go to war and it'd be 5d12 for the Americans. So that is a nice amount of force. His aircraft would be hit by all this anti-aircraft, so he'd be scared to lose some of them. And we could challenge every single aircraft he has here with a 1d12, so 25% chance on each of these aircraft that they'll be lost. Statistically, he's going to lose one and, well, perhaps one or two. One or two, somewhere there. And that is a nice enough hit on him. He may win this fight, especially considering his shore bombardment. He may win the fight, but he'll take a few casualties. On the shore bombardment phase, if he takes out 2 or 3 of my units, that still leaves 3 at 5, which means we're going to at least wipe out his Marines and might get into this. So he might have, at the end of the fight, 1 infantry remaining. So it would be a very close fight. It's tough to say, but then his aircraft is involved too, so that is the unknown factor. What will Japan do? Well, I find Japan has put itself into a situation where it's difficult to know what they can do. They have, 4 enemies. They have the Comintern, the Soviets up here, who are growing stronger. They have CCP, who is really strong. They have the KMT and the Commonwealth, and I guess the 5th one is the Americans over there. So, will Japan go to war against the USSR? I may be biased, but I think they will. It's only a plus 5 increase to the income of the Americans if they do, and they could pick up a good chunk of territories now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. $6 up there by going to war against the Soviets, especially if they combine it with a German attack against the Soviets. They could get $6 here in the first turn if they launched it, well, maybe not this one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, $5 in the first turn if they launched an attack and planned it out. They could amphibiously land here and get this one for free and move up units from this position across this area, or this area, into Primorsky Krai, that's the way it's pronounced, Primorsky Krai, and then pick up Chita here against 1 militia, as was these 2. They could pick them up, and again, combined with a combined strategy with the Germans. So in the first turn, they could pick up $5. In the subsequent round, they could pick up 6, 7, 8. $8. $8 was what they'd have on the next turn. So in that very first turn, they'd counter the American increase. So 5 for 5, and on the subsequent turn, an additional 3. The biggest danger to that is the CCP would definitely get involved. But if the Japanese did something to counter that over here, they would be fairly set. Now, if the Japanese protected this area sufficiently with some militia, and if they had these 2 territories, then any attack across the desert is going to be facing a -1 for the attackers. Similar to mountains, but the desert is, desert works kind of similar. The land units will get a -1 on their combat across that area. Not a horribly hard to defend area. But of course, and also the CCP militia can't go into these 2 areas. It's not their homeland. So it would be a little bit more equal fight up there. Of course it would be a struggle. It's one of their options though, and I think it's a fairly decent option because, well, I think if the goal is to keep the Americans out of the war, that's not a bad goal. And I've kind of helped them along a little bit by decreasing the American income by $8. Okay. Now over here we have the CCP. Now CCP is a huge nut to crack. But on the plus side, if Japan did invade the CCP, I doubt the Soviets would get too involved because they're going to be worried about their own front over here, and they wouldn't want to open up a second front. So I don't expect the Soviets would. If the Japanese attacked here, it would be a hard fight because they're fighting against stacks of militia. So the trick would be taking out opportune areas and then waiting for the stacks of militia to attack the Japanese so you could wipe them out. So a tough fight regardless of what it is. But I think China is basically lost to the Japanese at this point. It's very difficult for them to do anything about it. and I have no clue what they can do against China. There really isn't too much to do. All their territories are either coastal regions that they'd have to fight, or they'd have to go into city territory against, boost up infantry, or mountain territory. Just exceedingly difficult. Likewise, on the southern front, mountain territories that they have to fight over. So I think China is fairly out of the reach of the Japanese at this point, especially with their lack of land units. I don't think that's Japan's destination. Now, they have two other destinations, one of them being the Commonwealth. Again, if they go against the Commonwealth, it triggers the Netherlands to join the Allies, which would be a major thorn in the side of the German forces. But if they did that, they could pick up this territory basically for free, and they could definitely make some attacks against this stuff with their landing forces. Pick up Bengal, southern India, possibly this one. So 1, 2, 3, 4 bucks just from working on this stuff here. They could also take out this transport worth 8, this transport worth 8, and the Free French over here with 8 and 8, I think it is. 8 and 7 maybe. So they could definitely take off a lot of my units off the board and severely decrease what we have in India. But at the same time, India would survive, Calcutta would likely survive if he did that, and that means that we could reinforce with, 3 militia and 1 infantry in this position, making it an even tougher nut to crack. Additionally, we could start moving our Royal Navy to the Suez over here, still threatening Rome, as well as putting pressure on them over here, not to mention bringing the Americans quite a bit closer into the war as well. Singapore is a better option. They don't have any anti-aircraft, so it would be something different, but this coastal artillery could be doing some damage against their ships. Now, they might just simply damage their battleships, which they just sail back to home port and fix anyways, or they could just fix them in this dockyard or this dockyard. So it's not that hard to recover from that combat. So Singapore would be an option, and it's worth 2. So if the Japanese did attack, they could attack not Calcutta, but they could pick up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bucks here. 6 bucks here, possibly 7, 8. So they could pick up 8 bucks altogether over there. And they could also put pressure on Australia, although they are out of range for most of their stuff. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. They could attempt against here using their destroyers. Yeah, using their destroyers against here. Well, no, they could go all the way up to here. Using their destroyers, they can threaten this position as well. Their 4 destroyers can go all the way down here, I believe. And there are 2 light aircraft as well. So they could actually capture Sydney on the next turn if they wanted to. I think they have sufficient strength to do so, because 2 of their aircraft plus 4 infantry, or 2 Marines and 2 infantry, can be dropped off here, as well as their battle cruiser and some heavy cruisers can reach. So they could definitely take out Sydney next turn, which, if I was going after the Commonwealth, I wouldn't go after India, I would go after Anzac, if that's what I was going to do. And that is a very viable option. And I think I should rectify that by building 2 militia here next turn, as well as some more infantry. I think that would be the case. But I expect that is what he may do. Of course, he leaves very little for him to worry about over here. Yeah, I'm not sure if that's what he should do. It'll definitely bring the Americans a decent way into the war as well. But that's something that I've just illuminated to myself by discussing it, is I need to fortify Sydney a little bit more. Because if the Japanese do intend to attack the Commonwealth, I would send a chunk of my four of my land units to this position, plus 2 aircraft, and take out Sydney. Now that would take, what does the Sydneyans get? They have 9 bucks in their treasury, so I'd reduce them by 9 bucks, but also make them practically disappear as a power here. That means that the Japanese could easily pick up these 2 territories later on, as well as this one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They could pick up 7 bucks worth over here, plus anything over here that they wish to do so. It'd be difficult, of course, but they could somehow manage it, especially by using just 2 destroyers over here to pick up 1 infantry and 1 marine, and dropping them off, say, in Hong Kong. So that is an option for the Japanese to do. So if I was the Japanese and wanted to go again to war, I'd have 2 options. One of them being go to war against the Soviets in a couple turns, or go to war against the Anzac now, because now is an opportunity. Now both of those, one of them would increase the American income by 5. One would increase the Americans by 5 IPPs. by going to war against the Soviets. The other one would be 5D12 would increase the Americans. Now, the other option for the Japanese is start migrating their way across the Pacific to threaten the Americans. But I don't see them doing that just yet. So that's not what they're going to do. Okay, I think I've covered strategy, and now I need to start developing further strategy more in depth. This is just like a global perspective of what might happen. So the Japanese might attack Russia in a couple turns, or Anzac in next turn. The Germans, they might pick up the neutral nations, or they might go after Soviets, go after the jugular, let's say. But I expect they're going to go after the neutral nations. That seems to be like the traditional pathway, to go after the neutral nations. And that's, I think, all that I can foresee at this point. Hopefully the Netherlands, Holland is a sufficient thorn in the side to the German player that Japanese won't declare war on the Commonwealth. That, and combined with the USA's increase to income, will hold them off for a turn or two, hopefully. Okay, I think that covers everything. So on my next, well, leave in the comments if you like 2 questions. I mean, I could find this one out myself, but can the Free French militia be boosted up to become regular infantry? And the second question is, what would you like to see in the next strategy video? Anything specific that comes to mind? Yeah, if not, I have an idea of what I could post up, but give me some suggestions on what you'd like to see, and I can discuss it and unpack a certain strategy for you guys. Okay, thank you all for watching, and I guess stay tuned to all these videos. Cheers!